Margery Simkin, you were already the casting director on Star Trek Discovery. So was it just a no-brainer for you to also do Strange New Worlds?
Well, I mean, Strange New World is a spin-off of people that my partner Orly Sidowitz and I cast in Discovery. They liked those cast members enough to decide to build a show around them. So it would have been a real bummer if we didn't get to do it, but.
That's true though, because it's like you guys did a great job. People responded to these characters, or the people you cast as these characters as well, because some of them, they're already established that fans know. So like, let's go back to that before that casting, because it's it follows Pike, Spock, and Number One, played by Anson Mount, Peck and Rebecca Romijn, introduced on Discovery. So what do you remember about casting them in those roles?
Well, Anson was somebody that we brought in for Lorca in the first season. Orly's a huge fan of his from Hell on Wheels. She's a sucker for long hair and a beard. And so we had brought him in for Lorca, and he wasn't really right. He was really too young for that role, but he did something that sort of previewed and became the proof of concept for us when we cast the rest of the show during COVID. Anson was in New York, and he put himself on tape at his kitchen table in his little New York apartment. And he was such an incredible sport about it. And it was so charming that he had done it, because he was an established guy who had done, the lead in a series. So he's the kind of person that you would think doesn't have to read, doesn't have to self-tape. And he did it with such grace and charm that even though he was wrong for Lorca, we of course remembered him. And then when the Pike opportunity came, Jeffrey Hunter was the original Pike, who was a classically handsome gray-haired guy. So we pretty immediately thought about Anson. And yet people wanted to retape him, and we thought, oh no, we have to ask him to tape again. And he was in another kitchen and put himself on tape again. And that spirit of sportsmanship, really sort of permeated everything that we did. I mean, the Spock situation, we were still live then, and saw many, many, many people for that role. And no one was quite right. And we couldn't tell people what they were auditioning for. So no one knew they were Spock. They didn't know they were a Vulcan. I mean, that was one of the more bizarre and challenging things we've had to do on Star Trek. And that says a lot. But he was just, there was sort of 100 people, and there was Ethan, and he was spectacular.
And he's great. Yeah,
totally. He was great.
Well, that just makes me think, like, were you guys secretive about the casting for Strange New Worlds and some of these characters who are younger versions of established characters, or some are relatives of established characters? So what was like the casting breakdown for these roles?
Well, we had fake names. We had fake names upon fake names. Nobody could remember the fake names. I mean, we had a chart with the fake names and the real names for our showrunners, because nobody could remember what was what and what not to say to the actors when we were Zooming with them, because for a long time we had to keep everything secret, and people were so fantastic about not, blowing it. The secret thing is because the fan base for Star Trek is, of course, very, very present, and looking for every crumb of everything and writing about everything. So the breakdowns are very vague.
Mm-hmm. Well, before we started, we were chatting about how COVID allowed you guys to get more self-tapes and expand your search, or broaden your search from all over the world in casting these roles. So can you talk about like finding some of these actors who not super well known, like Christina Chong and like Jess Bush and Celia Rose Gooding, who's a young Uhura who I think is really great in the role, and just she's so like aspirational. This cadet. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what was great for us about COVID, and I'm sure some of my colleagues have different feelings about this. But as I just said with Anson, we had done the self-tape to great acclaim. Anson never came in person. And in fact, Orly and I just met the cast at the premiere of Strange New World. We met none of the actors. We had met none of the actors in person until the premiere, which was really wonderful to see them in person. But it was very exciting for us to be able to do all this stuff virtually, because we could open the search really widely past the traditional agencies that you usually reach out to, do some of the stuff in this range that Cami was talking about, and really just bring in people from all over. And what's happened in the past is that when we knew Jess for a long time, for a couple of years, we brought her in for things, and she always would get to the finals, and then people would want to meet her, but she wasn't really established. So flying her in from Australia seemed a stretch for them and daunting on those shows. And what was great about COVID is everybody knew they couldn't fly anybody in, so they were willing to accept and cast people. I mean, we did audition them in person. We did get on Zoom, thank you very much, Zoom, for with the showrunners, with everybody that would have been in the room. But I think because everybody had been Zooming so much for the writing and with their families, that people came to really know and understand that you can make a connection in this medium. It's a bit awkward, it's a bit weird, you have to adjust to it, but it's doable. And I think the fact that we have a great cast that works wonderfully with each other is a proof of that.
For sure. I also feel like maybe now, because of COVID, like people are more used to just connecting via Zoom, like virtually.
Absolutely.
Like, you have, people have like happy hour Zooms. So yeah.
Yeah, so they get that it's, before the idea was horrifying. No, we have to meet everybody in person. And then as you said, you're used to meeting your family and your friends. And I think we've all learned, it's still a little odd looking up at the camera and not looking at you, and, all those other odd things that you have to get into the habit of doing. But, the actors were adaptable, and being able to adapt to that, by the way, is good proof that they'll be able to adapt to all the strange things they're asked to do on the show. They have to work on an AR wall. They have to work, with green screen. They have to work with weird aliens that aren't going to be there, and all of that. And it's, you have to be game to be in this cast, really game.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the show, I think it's already in production on season 2, right?
They're pretty close. We just had the read through yesterday of 208, so we're almost done.
Oh, you're almost done. Wow. Yeah. And it's going to introduce Paul Wesley as Captain Kirk. So can you talk about casting him in such an iconic role?
Stress, a lot of stress, because you knew everybody was, going to be judging. I don't know if you've seen, there's a sort of hilarious photo that he sent out while he was keeping it quiet, because, nobody could know that he was doing it before it was announced. He got on an airplane and ended up sitting next to, randomly, William Shatner. And he did a selfie with Shatner, who was, I think, thought he was just some rabid fan, weird fan, and that was pretty hilarious.
It was meant to be. So
totally meant to be.
Yeah.
Totally meant to be. But it's challenging. You have to think about what, we're excited about him, and we think the fans will be too. That he has the charm and the, the stuff you're looking for that character, and to sort of recreate. What I'm really proud of for the cast doing those roles is that they've, they honor it, we honor it, but recreate it.
Yeah, and it also, they make it their own a little bit.
Yes,
and you could tell they eventually grow into the older characters that we know. So
right.
Well, Margie, it was great speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time, and we'll see you back here in a little bit.
Okay.